So as you all probably know, Line 6 has just released firmware 1.30 for the Line 6 PodGo. This has been a very anticipated release, and a lot of folks have been wondering what was going to be a part of it. So I wanted to give you a very quick rundown of what my top 5 favorite new features are in this PodGo 1.30 firmware update. So without further ado, let's get started with number 5. So coming in at number 5 is a feature we call user defaults. So let's go over to PodGo Edit and take a look at what I feel is an extremely useful new feature that I think a lot of you will get a lot of use out of. So in the past on our PodGo, if we, let's say, always like to use something like this transistor tape effect, we would pull it up and we would get sort of factory default settings that come up on it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I got those factory default settings, they were really nothing like what I wanted to use. So let's say I always found myself maybe setting my settings like they are right here. I can simply go up now to the effect, right click on it, and you'll see there is a user default selection. So when I click that, now every time I open up an instance of the transistor tape, it is going to default to those particular settings. So I don't have to go back to the factory default settings and then change them to what I like. So we can do this for amps, cabs, we can do this for everything. I could come up to a cab block, again, hit user default with whatever I have set up here, and it's going to work. Now, if we ever don't want those settings anymore and we want to revert back to factory default, I simply right click and hit factory default, and that is set. So we can come up with the ability to call up any effects block, amp, cab, and set a user default so that our favorite settings pop up right away when we pull that block up. Very cool feature. Coming in at number 4 is something a lot of folks have been asking for, not only in the PodGo, but also in the Helix and HX Stomp, although they've had this with their 3.1 firmware update for quite some time now. It's a really great spring reverb effect, and in the PodGo, this is going to be called the Hot Springs, and I have an instance of it up here, and this is just the factory default settings. You'll notice we have dwell, spring count, the number of springs we can adjust, the drip setting, low, medium, high, low cut, high cut, mix, and level. These are just the factory settings that come up, and if I play this, so a really nice effect. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of settings on it. But a much nicer spring reverb effect than we've ever had in the PodGo up until now. I do have a series of videos going very in depth into these models, not for the PodGo, but for the Helix and HX Stomp version for when they came available in 3.1. I'm going to try to remember to link to those below, because if you watch those videos, everything I talk about will also apply to the PodGo version. So I don't really have to remake those videos. You can go watch those. So check out the description below for a lot of the new features that I talk about here. I have specific videos up for those just for the Helix, but they apply here as well. Coming in at number 3 is the new dynamic hall reverb. So many folks were asking for a much more full-featured, lush-sounding reverb in both their Helix and now their PodGo, and the dynamic hall does just that. If we take a look at it, we have a decay which can go all the way up to an infinity setting. Look at this, 44 seconds, 45 seconds, and then to infinity. Pre-delay, room size, 10 meter, 20 meter, 30 meter. We have diffusion, damping. We have a motion control, which is very cool. So we can see we can use it in that manner, but there's also a million other settings here that we can use and come up with some really beautiful reverbs. Again, I have a dedicated video to that for the Helix, which will completely apply to the PodGo version. A link below will be in the description. What you heard there was the new Mandarin Rocker amp model, and this is one of my favorite new features. What you were actually listening to is my Mandarin Rocker PodGo preset, which is either available right now on the Line 6 Marketplace or will be in the next day or so. It is ready to go, and I will have a link to that below as well, along with the other videos that I've done more in depth with these features. It's a wonderful amp model based off the Orange Rocker Verb 100 Mark III. What a fabulous amp model. I'm really digging this preset. So I also have a video that goes much more in depth to dialing that in for the Helix as well, and that link will be below in the description as well. Coming in at number 1 is the new Retro Reel mod effect. What the Retro Reel is basically a tape machine simulator and gives us the sound of playing through or recording onto an old reel-to-reel tape machine. So some really cool things here. We can have wow and flutter, which would kind of mimic maybe a poorly maintained tape machine. We have saturation to add tape saturation, low, high cut. We can alter the tape speed from 7.5 inches per second, 15 inches per second, 30 inches per second. There's a couple ways to use this, and you'll hear the wow and flutter can be a very cool modulation effect, but it might not be for every situation. If I turn this off, get a little modulation there. Let me crank that so you can really hear. That's actually not my favorite part of this, though. I actually bring that wow and flutter down. I usually bring a little bit of saturation in. Just to add some character to the tone, and we can darken it up with the 7.5 inch setting. Or make it more pristine with the 30 inch. But another really cool use of this is by dragging it before the amp and using it almost as more of an overdrive pedal, cranking up our saturation. And getting a very unique distortion out of it, which we can actually shape using the texture control. So we can see there's some very cool tones hidden in this, whether you use it before the amp. Probably not how it was designed to be used, but there's some very cool effects that we can get out of it using it in that manner, more of an overdrive or boost pedal, but dragging it to the end and using it in a much more subtle manner is a really cool way to glue a tone together and add a little bit of warmth to it. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 favorite features of the new firmware 1.30 for the Line 6 PodGo. Check out the description below for all the links to my Mandarin Rocker PodGo preset that's on the Line 6 Marketplace, but also to all the more in-depth videos. Mind you, they're for the Helix, but it's all the same controls and all the same principles are going to apply to dialing in some tones using all of these different new wonderful features that we've just got on our PodGo. So don't waste any more time with me. Hit up your PodGo, get it updated, and start messing around with some of these. And I really, really hope you enjoy some of those. Let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite new features are. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some enjoyment out of watching it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out, and I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. Ciao for now.